Last time on Breaking Through Glass Ceilings, Shedeur Sanders had not been drafted yet. It was right after the first round. Now he's been drafted, but he got picked by a team that was going to pick him anyway, the Cleveland Browns, and they picked him in the fifth round. Something don't sit right with that one. That Saquon Barkley says, I'm going to golf with Trump, whether you like it or not, and do the White House visit. Plus, Shaq and Dwight Howard did a podcast together. All that and more coming up on this episode of Breaking Through Glass Ceilings with Uncomfortable Conversations.
I'm excited to talk more about my background.
Also worked in so many places of media, which you will find out more. Two friends who like wrestling that talk about wrestling. To now, let's start a podcast. And
Grassroots style, the way me and Brian have done it. Every opportunity is an opportunity.
Kind of makes me want to step my game up a little bit more just because the space is so oversaturated. Anyone can start a podcast.
I live in New York City, so there's, opportunity everywhere in New York. Like, everyone's doing something. You go to a bar for happy hour, the bartender has a business.
And you apply that same strategy to network. You being very intentional. Find your why. What's the reason? Then do it.
Podcasting allowed me to break out of my comfort zone, to break out of my shell.
This is 6HM Productions.
Before we get started with today's show, I just want to remind you that you can save 10% on your order with Symphony of Balloons, a luxury balloon company that also offers a 360 camera. Just simply mention you heard about them on Breaking Through Glass Ceilings. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Through Glass Ceilings with Uncomfortable Conversations. I'm your host, Brian H. Waters. This show, of course, is brought to you by 6HM Production. Folks, I saw a lot of comments. I seen the comments. People was upset. I posted about how it was unfair and I didn't like the treatment that Shedeur Sanders had received, as he was not selected in the first or the second or the third or the fourth round. In fact, we were paying equal attention to the NFL draft on Saturday. And it was around 2:00 p.m. Eastern time where he was selected by the Cleveland Browns. Now, I mentioned before, it really sucked about the politics. And the thing I saw a lot on the internet was that the NFL, they was going to try to call them governors, but people will still call them NFL owners, right? So the NFL owners maybe tried to humble him. They didn't like his comments of, if you're trying to change your franchise, then pick me. If you ain't trying to change your culture, if you ain't trying to change your franchise, don't pick me. People didn't like that. They didn't like the fact that as confident he was, in his ability. They felt he was more about the team, the brand of Shedeur Sanders, and not the team. What it really was is, too, they didn't like the fact that the kid is already rich. His dad is one of the greatest football players, not just at his position, one of the greatest football players of all time. And he's still that confidence. People didn't like it. They didn't like the fact Deion Sanders said, if he saw a situation that wasn't good, he was going to step up. So NFL owners decided to humble this kid. What I did like was the video I saw that once he was drafted, he showed the same excitement. Shout out to his brother, Shiloh, who was not drafted, but selected by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I should say signed on as a free agent, an unsigned draft pick. And, this thing took an ugly turn. I saw people saying, well, Cam Ward got drafted number 1, so you can't make it a race thing. Yeah, you can. I never thought where I would see two guys kind of talking trash, having fun talks, fun jabs at each other, saying, okay, we're going to see who's better. I never seen something where one was drafted in the first round, the other was drafted in the fifth round. Like, imagine in and I know people are going to say I'm going to the extreme with this one, but just imagine in the 2003 NBA draft, LeBron James was drafted number 1 overall, and Carmelo was drafted towards the end of the second round. Like, that just don't sit right, And not to say Shedeur and Cam were rivals, but they were clearly the most. Two of the most influential quarterbacks, two of the most, people that got a lot of airtime. For weeks, it was always, okay, who's going to pick Shedeur? Who's going to pick Cam? And then, you have all these experts coming out here saying, oh, he can't do this. He's not that, And we've seen the NFL, especially the Cleveland Browns, fail at drafting quarterbacks. I mean, do we not have to remind you this is the same team that drafted Brady Quinn after his incredible run at Notre Dame, or Johnny Manziel, another kid that they made wait? So what I'm hoping for, I really hope and pray that Shedeur Sanders goes out there and he outperforms everybody except Lamar Jackson, and that he plays well enough for his numbers to look good. I don't want the Cleveland Browns to win a lot of football games. And there's 2 games I don't want him to do well in, unless it's garbage points. But I really hope Shedeur Sanders goes out there and proves everybody wrong. Because there was a lot of teams that need quarterbacks, and they just ignored them. So, and people could make this statement, oh yeah, Travis Hunter, Jonte Webster, but the guy still had to do his job. He had to go out there. He had to throw the football to them. So congratulations to Shedeur on making the NFL. Congratulations, Charlotte, and congratulations to Deion Sanders. America has proven time and time again they have a problem with a confident black father. Look at LeVar Ball. Say what you want. LaMelo is in the NBA. Lonzo is in the NBA. But people have an issue with black fathers who instill confidence in their sons. They had an issue with Cam Newton's dad. They had an issue with Ja Morant's dad. Now, he's on a different type of level for obvious reasons, but it seems like they will love to pick apart the fathers who really instill greatness in their children. Look at LeBron James. Everybody's not going to be Del Curry. Let's just call for what it is. So that's what I have to say about that. I saw this quote. I saw this video. Adam Silver says, you NBA media folks should spend more time talking about why people love the game. And, the NBA media, we see so much criticism of the game. LeBron James has spoke of it, said he wouldn't want to be the face of the NBA was thrust upon him because people, all they do is criticize the game. It's very interesting. I don't get it. I as somebody who's a wrestling journalist that I pride myself on, I love talking about the art. I love talking about the storylines. I'm not getting in the business of telling, oh, this wrestler botched here, this wrestler botched there. I always felt uncomfortable when people would do that when it came to the NBA. Oh, this person, they got to show up. They got to do this. And because what happens is people speak with such brass as if they could go out there and do it themselves. And we all know they can't. I know my limits. I cannot shoot an NBA range 3 and I don't have handles. Now, and I can hit my free throws, but as a fan, do I get upset when I'm watching LeBron James and the Lakers lose? Yes. Do I get upset when I see them miss free throws? Yes, because I've been used to Kobe Bryant making all his. When they had Steve Nash, he would make all his. But it is annoying when you do turn on the game and you turn on the television and it seems like it's all critique instead of celebration. And people always bring up ratings, but I will always say, y'all control the narrative. You know, we did not celebrate the Oklahoma City Thunder. Instead, we just kept saying, all we kept hearing was, can they get it done in the playoffs? Right? We didn't hear a lot of celebrations about them. We didn't hear hardly any celebrations about the Cleveland Cavaliers. So those are the things when I hear Adam Silver make that comment, I understand. I understand exactly what he means. Hopefully it'll change. I don't know if it will, but hopefully it'll change because there's a lot of great basketball being played, but we're focusing on the negative that we're actually turning people away from the game. And, you know, I was talking to my good friend, shout out to Ashley Baker, and she was saying she haven't watched much of the NBA. NBA sucks. And I was like, wow, Ashley's an NBA head. Like, I will say when it comes to NBA and NFL, Ashley pays way more attention than I do. But I was like, maybe she's right. But then I thought about it, so it's the way the narrative was being driven about the game. See, last year with the WNBA, I felt it was celebrated more and there was more eyes on it. You know, you didn't hear people like knocking down Caitlin Clark too much. Now, everybody was trying to pick apart Angel Reese's game. Even when she's setting rebound records, they was trying to say she was padding the stats. You know, but even Asia Wilson, you know, we celebrated these ladies. And I want to see the game get back to that. You know, it's just a lot of way the coverage of sports is. Everybody's looking for the hot take. Everybody's looking to go viral. And that's the part that's like, come on, man. And as much as, to be honest with you, I'm not like the biggest fan of player podcasts. That's why I don't mind listening to a Draymond Green podcast. You know, like Melo's a retired player. I like listening to his. I like hearing what he has to say. But, you know, I do feel like people who never touched the basketball in their lives or couldn't get past rec league or high school always got the loudest things to say. And that's the part that's getting annoying. I understand where Adam Silver is coming from. Well, speaking of which, speaking of NBA, shout out to Shaquille O'Neal, Dwight Howard. They had a podcast. I haven't finished listening to it, but it was refreshing to see those two guys together. You talking about the game that I love, right? The game that I love was the way Shaq and Dwight Howard played. You know, when I was playing in the yard with my friends and my god brother, shout out to Michael, I like to play the post, back people down, hit the jump shot, you know, hit the layups off the backboard. I liked watching when Shaq would dominate in the paint, when a young Dwight Howard would dominate in the paint. Unfortunately, Dwight got caught up in the transition. So he got caught up as the game moved further outside. But I thought it was refreshing because all we would hear is Shaq going at Dwight. Shaq got something to say. He feeling insulted, feeling like he trying to be Superman. So one of the things was interesting when Dwight said, nah, man, the Superman thing was because of Soulja Boy. But Kenny Smith kind of egged it on, and Shaq admitted he's sensitive. And he said that he was calling Dwight Howard out a lot of times because he liked him, and he was doing what Wilt and Kareem did to him. They would say, oh, yeah, but he's not great. We're not talking to him. They made him and pushed him to get angry and go out and win. Dwight said, well, I don't want to get angry. He said, no, you should. You should have got angry at what I said, because when you got angry at Stan Van Gundy, you went out there and you put up baskets and you won Defensive Player of the Year. You took the team to the finals. And I'm like, and I started sitting there. I was like, man, imagine if they could have had these conversations years ago. What could Dwight Howard have been? Now, it do sucks that he was slighted out of the top 75. He's one of the greatest 75 players of all time. I had the issues, if you look on my timeline years ago, when Dwight Howard chose to leave the Lakers and went to the Houston Rockets. I ain't like him. I ain't like that at all, because I wanted Dwight Howard to stay in Los Angeles and win. And he did the tour. Y'all remember the Lakers put up the billboards and everything and wanted to re-sign him. And Kobe was basically saying, I got to teach you how to win. I got to teach you how to get there. And he went the other way. And it do make you wonder if we could have got, because one thing I did learn was Dwight Howard was dealing with a lot of back issues when he was with the Lakers. If we could have got a Kobe Bryant at that age, he still had enough juice in the tank, and a prime Dwight Howard, how many championships could they have won? Only one can dream. Only one can dream. They don't even have that game. Like, you can't even redo that. You got to go through a lot of hoops to do it on 2K. I like going through NBA 2K. I don't know if y'all do this, but I like playing the different eras. So for 2K24, I redid the Lakers. I had to keep Kobe and Shaq together. Ended up winning 10 championships. The last one I did was Oklahoma City, and I kept James Harden, Kevin Durant, and Russell Westbrook together. And I even like at one point, Rudy Gay was on my team. I think at one point I had Kevin Garnett. I haven't played in months, but I always like taking those eras and keeping certain things together. So I always wonder what would have happened if like Kobe and Dwight would have stayed together. I'm going to take a quick break, and we're going to talk about Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, tax season is upon us. Perhaps you missed the deadline. Well, I want to recommend Sophie's Tax Prep. If you're looking for accounting and financial services, tax preparation services, or refund loan up to $7,000, this is the place you need to be. And guess what? You can handle this all virtually. Sophie's Tax Prep offers comprehensive tax preparation services to individuals and businesses and is currently accepting new clients. Reach out at 443-526-1360 or info@stpenterprises.com. Like I said, you can handle this all virtually. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to support this podcast by wearing a t-shirt, whether it's the one that says breaking through glass ceilings or the one that says no ceilings above success, simply go to foryourwear.com. Also, you can support some of your other favorite podcast and content creators, including Those Wrestling Girls, Seahawk, and the Wrestling Club. And you can support some of your favorite independent wrestlers, including Jay Bougie, Trisha Dora, Chaz the Don. Shoot, all the Pure Ignorance is on there. So go on foryourwear.com, go under personalities, you'll find Brian H. Waters, and buy a t-shirt. And remember, I'll give you a shout out on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, are you in the gym every week? Are you looking to kind of keep yourself cool while you work up a nasty sweat? Well, I got the best thing for you. Cooling bands, bandanas, cooling towels, and so much more. Go to Vertical Athletics, get your favorite team in MLS or MLB, or guess what? Now they have a custom option so you can upload your own logo and you can save 10% at checkout when you enter the code Brian H. Waters. Go to verticalathletics.com, use the code Brian H. Waters to save 10% on some of your best cooling gear. All right, I'm back. Hope you check out some of the links I provided in this episode. Folks, start low, we go high, right? Saquon Barkley, your favorite running back, the Russian leader, the guy who sacrificed breaking Eric Dickerson's record so that he could sit out in the extended week 18. I don't like that. I don't like the extra week. But he could sit out so that he would be fresh for the playoffs. And it paid off. In case you didn't know, the Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl. He didn't do much in the Super Bowl, not compared to what he did in weeks before. But he went and played golf with Donald Trump. Donald Trump, who is the current president of the United States, who's been very divisive, who is, very loud. Now, shout out to him for, I can't believe it. I'm not going to say it that way. I will say that, he did call the NFL owners out for not drafting Shedeur sooner. I'll leave it at that. But Saquon Barkley went and played golf with him. And then he went on the whole, I respect the office and y'all mad, whatever. What did you think was going to happen, Saquon? And the Eagles had their White House visit. and he was in attendance. Now, while he was in attendance, his Super Bowl winning quarterback, Jalen Hurts, was not. There was a scheduling conflict. Shout out to Jalen and the black women on his team. I'm not going to say there wasn't a scheduling conflict. What I will say is that is the best reason not to attend the White House. That is the best way to say it, because guess what? You don't look like the bad guy. But yeah, Jalen Hurts didn't attend, but Saquon, he did. You know, he got the handshake with Donald Trump. Here's my advice, folks. You have to make a decision if you're going to separate the player from the person, or the player you root for the person that you see outside. Because people get upset. Now, I thought about this as I was preparing the show. How would I feel if Lamar Jackson did it? I don't know. I don't think I would like it at all. But, you know, for people out there who are Saquon fans, who are Eagles fans, you got to figure that out. And the reason why I say that is because we pick and choose our battles. And that's the thing they need to figure out. Are you somebody who roots for the player and the team, and what they do in their personal lives you have nothing to do with, you disparage it or whatever? Or are you somebody who roots for the person, whatever? It's crazy. I know that's crazy talk, but here's the thing. I've seen people get upset at athletes who take political stances, right? But the moment they're accused of sexual assault or domestic violence, they turn a blind eye and say stuff like, well, what they do in their personal lives have nothing to do with me. It's all bad. As a Ravens fan, do you think I'm rooting for Justin Tucker? I knew something was off. But I've been rooting for Tucker to be out of here during the middle of the season. I said, okay, he's old. It's time to put him in the pasture, say thank you, send him to retirement home. And then hearing about all the things, I said, oh, I get it. That's why the Ravens couldn't win the Super Bowl. I'm fine with it. I don't want him on my team no more. I don't want to root for a player who does that. And that's what I think. It gets so confusing, because do we root for players, or do we sitting up there, like when R. Kelly got all the charges was brought against R. Kelly. I heard a lot of, well, I support the man or the artist. I focus on the art, not the artist, not his personal lives. I don't listen to R. Kelly's music. But I'm not going to be one to condemn people for making the choices that they make. Now, I've seen a lot last week that tells me what type of people there are. And I'll put it like that, right? Now, if you're somebody who say, okay, I just strictly focus on my team and I root for the team to win, all right, cool. But it's when you dismiss the acts. That's where I have the issue with, right? When you just start dismissing the acts. A lot of people told on themselves when I brought up the fact that Shannon Sharpe was dealing with somebody young enough to be his granddaughter. There was all the, well, she's old enough to consenting adults, whatever. And the facts is it was not illegal. But I've said this, the people I would want to associate myself with are people who would not engage in that behavior. Like Ryan Clark said, yeah, it's legal, but he wouldn't be comfortable with his 20-year-old daughter dating somebody Shannon Sharpe's age. So there's so much, and I think it's time we have to put a wall between sports and politics as far as our rooting interests. Now, sports and politics are always going to cross. That's the thing, right? Because athletes, whether they like it or not, they are role models because you have younger people who look up to them. But we do have to figure out a way to tell our children, like, hey, you know, they are flawed human beings as well. If you look at a lot of them, brains haven't fully developed. They're still in their young 20s. So it's very different, but we got to figure out how. How do we put the wall between the athlete and, you know, their politics? You know, how do we build that wall in between? How do we still cheer for our teams, but still, I don't know. It's difficult, right? I'll give you an example. During WrestleMania week, Roman Reigns revealed to People magazine that he supports Donald Trump. He supports the president. It was a no-brainer, he said. A lot of people upset. And I'll tell people, feel how you want to feel. I'm not going to sit up here and say when the WrestleMania happened, I wasn't throwing my ones up. Because, yes, that's Joe Anawai's political views. I think it's unfortunate. I think it's unfortunate that Joe Anawai has a black wife with black children, but it's all class at the end of the day. Class always trumps race. People want to protect their money. You don't think Saquon Barkley was trying to do the same thing? And, you know, I've always said, yeah, Donald Trump, Dave Chappelle, I should say, said this. He was like, he was doing one of his stand-ups. He says, Donald Trump ain't for the people that's voting for him. He's for the people like me that's rich. And he's always about protecting the money. So that's why it doesn't surprise me when I see rich black men being Trump supporters or rich men of color being Trump supporters. It will never surprise me. So when I saw Saquon, I was like, okay. But shout out to Jalen Hurts. So that's what my thoughts are. I don't know. I don't have the answers, but I'd be interested to know what y'all think. How do you separate sports, your rooting interest in sports, and the politics? Y'all tell me. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to wrap up. That'll be it for this edition of Breaking Through Glass Ceilings with Uncomfortable Conversations. Make sure you stay tuned. Me and Queen PR be back this week. I believe so. You know, we got a lot going on. And we definitely want to, you know, we want to bring some content to y'all. It's been a long month, as I've said before. But, you know, a shout out to everybody, all the listeners, all the viewers, all the supporters. Shout out to y'all. I appreciate y'all. Y'all know to follow me on all social media platforms at Brian H. Waters. And until the next time, folks, don't let anyone place a ceiling above your success. So long, everybody. Are you a podcaster who is looking to share clips from your show in the simplest way possible? Well, I have the best solution, and that's Opus Clip. Opus Clip allows you to take the link to your show, upload it, and then they will clip off some of the best moments. And it allows you to edit it, change the captions, change the colors, and they also give you a viral score so you know which clip can potentially generate more buzz for your show. So, if you're looking to do that, click the link in the bio, sign up for Opus Clip, and go viral with some of the best content from your show.